Seems fair to me.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Can you believe it's already been a week? Welcome back to Donnybrook. Wow, do we have a lot to talk about this week. But first, let's meet the panelists, starting with Wendy Wiese from the Big 550 KTRS. Bill McClellan from your St. Louis Post-Dispatch. From the St. Louis Magazine, she's Sarah Fenske. And from the St. Louis American, Alvin Reid. And from a great talented art gallery somewhere, Maureen Hughes and her wonderful artwork, which is on our rotating exhibit on the mantle behind our set here at 9PBS. Maureen, thank you for sharing your talents with us. Folks, if you'd like more information about Maureen Hughes, go to MaureenHughes1976.com. Bill, we're going to start with you. In December of 2022, St. Louis Mayor Tishaura Jones started what's called a Reparations Commission. The idea was to provide some sort of compensation to people who were the victims of, or their families were the victims of slavery, segregation, or race-based harm. And the commission this week came up with an idea that there should be some sort of reparation given to individuals who live in the city of St. Louis who fall in those categories, but they didn't say how much or when the checks will be written, or even for that matter, where the money should come from. When do you think the checks might be written?
Oh, Charlie, I can't see that far into the future. I mean, it's a nice idea, but it's ridiculous. I mean, it has no chance of happening. I think, you know, if money went into schools to help poor kids, that'd be a great thing. I think voting rights are good. Affirmative action I'm for. But the idea that the government, the city government, is going to issue checks to people for reparations from slavery is not going to happen. And, you know, it might be a nice campaign thing for Mayor Jones to talk about, but we'll just have to have another commission, and then they can have a subsequent commission. I mean, it's unrealistic to the max.
Okay, so I qualify, but I'm with Bill. It's just kind of a non-starter. And this is one of those things where I'm speaking for myself. I am not speaking for any group of people, my paper, anything like that. This is just me. And this is just, I think this is a waste of time, and this is a waste of energy. Now, if for some way there was a way of targeting some money not based upon reparations whatsoever, without the use of that word, without the use of that thought, then I could get with it, and then maybe, just maybe, it could become a reality. But I'm sorry, this is just not a thing that is not worth putting this much effort to. And you say they've been meeting for 18 months to say, like, what? People are deserving of money? Well, I could have done that in 18 minutes. Yes, people are deserving of some kind of payback from what went on for hundreds of years in this country, which we never got our 40 acres, and we never got our mule. Yeah. But you know what? We still got what we got. And to further that, it's not through reparations.
I think, you know, in the draft of this proposal, there's a number of things that this commission is asking for that I think are already in the works with the ARPA funds. And so there's some irony there of saying, okay, we need to do this and this. I think the city of St. Louis and I think Mayor Jones are already working on some of those things. I think cash payments are going to end up being a non-starter, though, in part because, you know, the universal basic income pilot project that the city tried to do, it's at this point on hold and likely dead in the water because of a legal challenge. You would see a legal challenge over this exact same thing using the exact same part of the law. I don't think they can just give out cash to individuals.
That's right. That's why the mayor has targeted $37 million federal dollars for North St. Louis.
Right.
It's kind of a way around that. But you couldn't have a system, or you couldn't give government money based on color, although Japanese internees and their families got $20,000 in the 1980s.
But Darlene Green is pushing back on Mayor Jones, and I mean she's insisting that processes are followed and that the processes are in place. So that in terms of the Board of Aldermen this week, that has a lot. I think that has a long way to go.
Yeah, and you know, I understand what went on in the 40s. That was in the 40s. That was for a group of people that, you know, like I said, literally just held captive. I get that. That was then. Well, this is now, and that was Japanese Americans, and we're talking about Black Americans, and let's just be straight up. It ain't gonna happen.
What if we followed the Evanston, Illinois example, and it was basically giving people some property assistance, and folks could maybe get some help with their mortgage, and they also would be able to get some funds to fix up their yard, which would raise the value of the property, meaning they'd actually pay more taxes, which would be good for the city. And I think everybody in the city would appreciate it if the properties were in better shape. Maybe not a check, but maybe some sort of assistance.
Well, that's a fine idea, but that's a long way from reparations.
Check. Yeah, that's
the people who want reparations want a check, Charlie, and the idea that, well, we're going to help homeowners or help people get homes. That's all fine.
Or we're going to make.
That's not.
Or we're
maybe they're asking for a check now. That's their initial bargaining position, but they'll settle for money that goes toward fixing up their property.
But I think there's something distasteful about just the notion of reparations and then forcing them to be placed in a bargaining position. You know, to me, that's just...
Well, okay, they're having this discussion in California, even at the state level.
Right.
And it's like, okay, yeah, they had a committee come in with the same ideas, and it cost the state like $17 billion. Now, you talk about, like, that's not going to happen.
Front of that?
Right.
But I don't think even though the Evanston model, when you think of making a home more energy efficient or bringing up the value within the neighborhoods, that's a great idea, but it isn't. That's, what and gone from a check.
And again, that's exactly what the city has been trying to do with the American Rescue Plan Act dollars, is they're trying to put more money into North City. They're trying to put money into programs that are helping people.
That shouldn't be that difficult, given the state of North City, but the city has botched it up.
Well, they are trying.
Well, they say they're trying, but they won't give us the information to prove it. In other words, all of the grants are private. The people who have investigated the grants aren't talking.
It's just...
That's separate from the...
But it's related somehow.
It's related somehow.
It's crazy.
Let's move on then to the St. Louis Public Schools, which is also not talking.
Oh, boy.
Blythe Bernhardt of the Post-Dispatch filed Freedom of Information requests, 10 months ago. She's still waiting for them. She said that they might come in late November, Alvin. But the most recent story that she's reported on, and others have too, is that Millicent Bourrichet, the interim superintendent of schools, is not certified to be a superintendent in the state of Missouri. She had certification in Illinois and in Washington State, but both those certifications expired. Now, let me ask you this. Is it really that important to have certification? What if Lee Iacocca or Barack Obama wanted to be superintendent of public schools in the city of St. Louis? Wouldn't we say, hey, that would be a great idea, even though they don't have certification?
This certification thing, look, for one, she could qualify for it, I guess, putting forth, doing whatever, because she has been a teacher and all that. Okay, but who cares? Because she's not going to be with the district come the end of this school year, maybe a little bit before it anyway. They're going to move on. All right, and might I also say, and I really want to say this, the value of reporters and the value of a daily newspaper is being played out with your reporter at the Post-Dispatch who is covering this story at SLPS. Because a lot of this nonsense would not be being reported on at all. And it needs to all have a light shined on it. So anyway, kudos to her. And as for the school district, okay, she's the interim. Obviously, she's going to be gone. Some other people are going to be gone. When this audit comes out, Lord knows what all is going to happen. And everything's going to be moving on. So the fact that she's not certified right now, that's small potatoes to the stew of mess they got down there.
Blythe has done a wonderful job reporting, but we had an editorial about this very thing, about Ms. Bourrichet being the superintendent, that if we're throwing Dr. Scarlett out because of cronyism, why in the world are we putting her #1 crony in the top job? I mean, it's totally ridiculous.
Not only that, but with her Trail of Tears resume.
Yeah.
I mean, you have people as far back as what 2010 talking about the fact that she was a bully, that she destroyed programs that were in place in certain school districts. How she achieved, was it $200,000? Is that what the salary was here? The whole thing, it's going to be a fabulous novel one of these days.
And I would, but in her defense, those are allegations.
Well, there are some pretty serious allegations.
Yeah, they're all serious, but she wasn't convicted of a crime.
No, but she's a teacher. I mean, she's an educator, and where there's smoke, there's fire. This was at every single solitary stop along the way.
And the crazy defense that, well, she's such a warm advocate for children. That makes some adults uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, this, these people at the Board of Ed.
Well.
And don't let your license expire.
Go ahead.
I want to say in defense of her, that was a bad defense. So I'm going to offer a slightly better one. There's already been so much instability for this.
That's what I was going to say.
So much chaos. And so the person who is kind of like, they're at the top because of the people whose heads have been chopped off, to just kind of stick with them but watch them very closely, I think that makes a lot more sense than say, okay, now we need to bring in a whole new person who doesn't have any idea how anything even works and their badge doesn't even work. It's so complicated to start a new job.
And I was going to say that too. I can defend having her there to the end of this school year. Now, if they were to hire her or something like that, then that's a whole different story. They need to begin a search immediately, and every candidate that applies needs to be vetted by the entire community.
But think about it. Is anyone qualified going to apply, really?
I think so.
You'd have to be pretty desperate to come to St. Louis schools right now. I mean, the St. Louis Public Radio is reporting this week that the kids are being transported to school in cars.
I understand, but wait a minute, Charlie.
They have expired license plates.
Wait, Charlie. At least 5 people applied for the job, and it was down to there were 2 other. No. But we don't know. One was a woman who already worked in the school district, and the other gentleman was from another city. We don't know.
I thought there were 2 men who were qualified on the board, or not on the board, but in the school system, who need to be.
I think they just hired the wrong person.
But hearing you talking about Miss Borsade making it to the end of the year, you sounded a lot like your last name was DeWitt. Just.
Okay, next topic. Wendy, Greater St. Louis Inc. and some others are funding about 30 ambassadors for downtown St. Louis. My understanding is they're going to walk the streets during the day and the evening, I think till 11 o'clock at night, about exactly 7 days a week. And the idea is to enhance the security for downtown St. Louis. Thumbs up or thumbs down?
They are unarmed. Correct?
Correct.
Are they going to wear sashes? And I'm not, I mean, how do they?
Probably some
or
identifying
T-shirts or some
T-shirt,
a T-shirt. I understand that this is a community filled with people who love their hometown, who love where they live, who want to do something good to benefit the community. But when I was reading the description of what the ambassadors are about to embark on, I just thought they are lambs, to the, they could be injured, they could be killed. I mean, seriously.
You're saying lambs to the slaughter?
Lambs to the slaughter. I mean, when it said, they will be trained to tell when a situation is escalating. You have no legal authority, you have no weapon. I just think these people are going to be served up on a platter. I think it is an idea that springs from goodness. I think it just needs to be fleshed out again.
I don't think the situation downtown is such that a person walking around being sort of the eyes and ears and being able to radio for help is in any danger whatsoever. I mean, you can very safely walk around in downtown St. Louis, and having more people doing that and having just eyes and ears,
but
just making sure things are going well.
I mean, de-escalating?
I think, if you see, a crowd of people looking like they're going to cause some trouble, you don't go into the middle of that and de-escalate. I mean, I think the training will be practical.
I hope
I think it's a good idea, Wendy.
Okay.
And like Sarah says, you get more people on the streets, and they'll be in communication with the cops, and I think it's all good. And give people advice, like tourists right now, where can I find a place to eat? Just stuff like that.
Like I said, they're angels. They really are.
They
They're
are. But
angels.
now if they put a red beret on and call themselves guardian angels, then we'd have a problem with that. But I think I'm with you, Sarah. I think it'll be okay. I think 11 o'clock's a little too late. Okay, I think it's like my kids. I think y'all need to come up off the street at 9 o'clock now. You know,
Yeah, that's
when the street lights come
that's when
on.
stuff starts to happen.
Exactly.
I would have preferred 30 police officers, but I'll take 30 ambassadors in the meanwhile.
Okay, the cheese stands alone, but I still pray for their safety.
I'm kind of.
God love you.
I'm straddling the fence.
Sarah, let me ask you about a tiff, I guess, between Mark Maxwell, the political editor of Channel 5 KSDK, and the senior senator from the great state of Missouri, Josh Hawley. Maxwell had a piece pointing out that Hawley actually was taking credit for money that came for military purposes in Missouri, even though he voted against the bill that authorized those funds. In response, Hawley went after Maxwell, and on Twitter he said, yeah, he was fired from a previous job for unethical behavior. But thank goodness for your news source, because you looked into it and found, to the contrary, he left on extremely good terms.
Yeah, my colleague Ryan Kroll was able to talk to Mark Maxwell's former boss, and he went on the record and said that this is no such thing. It appears from everything we can tell that Josh Hawley just invented this allegation out of whole cloth. It's so distasteful to me. I understand that as journalists we have to take the slings and arrows of the people we cover, but to just kind of like throw that rumor out there as if it's fact when you have the clout of a U.S. senator, I really think Mark Maxwell should sue him for defamation. I think it was extremely defamatory.
Well, it would be fun to see, but I think the defense Hawley would use is the one that Rush Limbaugh used to use. I'm an entertainer. Nobody believes me. I mean, Hawley could make a good argument that way. He could say, look, when I first came to everybody's attention, was running for Attorney General, and I said, this is all I want. This is not a stepping stone. And then 2 months after he got elected, he announced, I'm running for Senate. I mean, he wrote a book about manliness, and he's famous for racing away from the fight. I think he could make a good argument that nobody in Missouri really believes me.
I think that if he were to sue, I think he could possibly win. I really do. Because I think people of both sides of the aisle, so to speak, are getting a little tired and weary of this. You just can't lie on people, especially when it comes to their profession, and it could lead to them possibly losing, their job. So I think that's a recourse that, Mr. Maxwell should consider. And I think that there is a chance that he could win. I know that, libel and slander are hard to prove.
Sure.
But at the same time, a little malice of forethought, and he and Senator Hawley have gone back and forth on some other things before.
If they do have a history, you're right. You're right.
I guess I forgot to mention that Hawley also said that Maxwell was eating people's cats and dogs.
Well, I really like Mark Maxwell. I think he's kind of like one of those throwbacks to the old days, and really like him a lot. I just kind of have a feeling that that he actually would win this, and I think you look at the polling after the vice presidential debate the other night. We just all want this nasty scorched earth chapter to be over, I think, and so maybe this would help in that regard.
Well, it would probably really depend on where the lawsuit was tried.
Yeah, right.
If you try
that
it
is very true.
in the city or the county, Hawley probably doesn't have a chance.
Yeah.
But if you try it out, if you could get it out of this venue, But,
well, I think that comes down to from going back to Journalism 101 law, it's your community. Your community could be one person. It could be where you work. It could be where you live. And I think that puts it squarely in St. Louis or St. Louis County.
Hey, Bill, let me ask you about plans that the St. Louis Business Journal are reporting about this week, that community leaders are in discussions for a nonstop Aer Lingus flight between the city of St. Louis, Lambert Field, and Dublin in Ireland. We have one European nonstop currently, and that, of course, is Lufthansa to Frankfurt 3 days a week. There is a catch. There's a $5 million grant from the state that would help subsidize Aer Lingus to perform this service. However, it expires December 31st. Some might say, that $5 million could probably in this day and age be better spent elsewhere than shuttling St. Louisans and Dubliners back and forth. What do you think?
Well, after I just came out against reparations, that I don't want these poor people to get checks, I'm now supposed to say, yeah, let's spend the money on that. But I mean, I think there is a good argument to be made that to help the city grow and be prosperous, we need to do something about direct flights, not just to Europe, but direct flights almost anywhere, harder and harder to get. But because I just was against reparations, I'll let somebody else make that argument.
You weren't against reparations. You were just doubting the possibility.
Thank you, Wendy.
Of reparations.
I yield my chair to Wendy.
All right. Well, I doubt the possibility of that, but I'm going to agree with you on this one, too.
Okay.
Because I think we need to be flying to as many places as we can. We just talked about our sorry airport, which you all defended, all right? And one way to maybe spruce it up is we have a lot more flights going to a lot more places. So I can't turn down, and I don't want to say that $5 million isn't a lot of money. You know, a fantastic gentleman stopped by with a tremendous check for Channel 9 that we all just saw, and we're very thankful for that, you know. But
how about the late teacher who gave $1 million
to Harris Stone?
That's
Yes,
right.
yes.
That's right.
So I mean, you know, it's. I don't want to say it's not a lot of money, but it's kind of like not a lot of money if it gets us international.
Well, what about these ARPA funds? Go ahead.
Well, I don't know that I'm going to bring up the ARPA funds again.
Right.
I feel like I've hit that horse a few too many times tonight. But I am against this, and that's despite being someone who would like to go to Dublin nonstop. That sounds great for me. But why I'm just skeptical on this. Right now we have this successful flight to Frankfurt, and they're back down to the 3 days a week. You know, they couldn't manage to expand it to do something more. But I'm so grateful that this is successful right now. And if we start subsidizing something that could peel off a bunch of European travelers, even to a different destination, I just don't think that's a good idea. I think we would be creating a situation where we could end up seeing both fail. We just don't have as many direct to Europe travelers to go around.
This pragmatism she brings to the
I don't
table
know.
is
Yeah,
just that was a bummer, Bill.
Wrong. It's wrong.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
I think a lot of people would like to go to Dublin. You know, your native Cleveland, Ohio has a nonstop to Dublin.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I think much more so than
Cincinnati has London and Paris, and
Right.
Pittsburgh might also have 2 nonstops like that.
Yeah, and they also
Dublin's
have-
not near Frankfurt.
Yeah, I think if you asked people, you know, Dublin, Frankfurt, I think they would probably want to go Dublin.
At this point,
That's making Sarah's point, though.
Yeah.
There's a choice.
But yeah,
I heard that
I think both.
Bill wanted a flight to Belfast, from what I understand.
Yes, of course.
Well,
he did.
yeah, I don't know if you can fly in there. I did go to Belfast, but we had to fly to Dublin to get there.
Alvin,
I
Reid.
can support both.
Alvin, there was a press conference by the St. Louis Cardinals this week, and they announced, among other things, that there'd be a successor to John Mozeliak. He's coming back for another year, much to the chagrin of a lot of fans out there after this season, which really wasn't our best. And they also announced they'll be spending less money on payroll next year. And I've never seen the columnists and others as critical of the Cardinals as they are right now. Is this the crankiest Cardinal Nation has ever been?
You know what? And I haven't lived here all my life, but you know, the Cardinals have always been a very successful franchise. And in down years, or even if it was a little stretch of them, it was nothing like this. And I'm just kind of like, I'm with those that are disgruntled, and like they just finally got to the point where I said, like, oh my gosh, that mumbo jumbo they spewed out on Monday, that was it. I said, like, I can't believe this. I look, if you're gonna say, hey, we're gonna rebuild the team, just say we're gonna rebuild the team. But all of that, and it said like, oh yeah, we were prepared for we were prepared for attendance to go down based on our performance last year. In fact, and they said this, in fact, it wasn't as big a hit as we thought it would be. Almost gloating that, oh, we still made money off of you, even though you didn't come. And then to say, we're going to cut payroll in part because didn't nobody come to the game. I'm like,
well, and the, you know, it seemed like the farm system, which everybody, you know, in terms of developing players, that seems to need a lot of work. But they were talking about analytics, which took me back to the times that I have enjoyed Moneyball. It's like, is that what we're doing here? Because John Mozeliak, he's given us great successes. He is a wonderful man, but he has to hit the road. He's got to hit the road. And Mike Schilt, I was going to say hit the road Jack, but his name is John, so it just didn't work. But you know, Mike Schilt has to just be scratching his head. The guy's got, Buy him out. Move us forward. It just doesn't make a bit of sense.
Are we sure the Cardinal Nation isn't spoiled, has enjoyed so many successful
no doubt.
years,
There's no
just
doubt.
can't
There's bitter and
understand what it's
sweet.
like to lose?
Well, that's part of it. But at the same time, I think St. Louis fans are, in a way, not becoming, but starting to understand maybe how some other franchises, fans feel sometimes.
Right.
They're like, you know what, y'all are kind of just, this ain't right. Now, this is something that's interesting. Apparently, the White Sox were so bad that there is great interest in the White Sox. They are apparently responding.
They're like the
people are like
Cubs.
buying season tickets and
The
carrying
people
on.
were disappointed when they won.
Yeah.
I went all the way to the White Sox
So
game.
It's like Mel Brooks, the producers.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Or the Cubs.
That's enough out of you, baseball fans. Let's see what folks had to say about last week's program. Attorney General Andrew Bailey says he advocated for the execution of Marcellus Williams because he wanted to represent the family of Leisha Gale. In a meeting with the presiding judge, her family said just the opposite. That from Timothy King of Fenton. Our courts are so starved of resources that it takes 5 years for an illegal migrant to be deported. If we want fast action, we need a huge reinvestment in deportation courts, judges, and lawyers. That from Deborah Moulton. Thank you. You can write us care of 9 PBS, 3655 Olive Street, 63108. We appreciate your emails, and on social media, use hashtag DonnybrookSTL. Call the 9 line, won't you, at 314-512-9094, and make sure you listen to us on all your favorite podcast sources. This is Cartober. Time to donate your used vehicle to 9 PBS. You get a great tax deduction, and you help your favorite television station. Thank you in advance for your consideration. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week at this time.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9 PBS.